tear slipped free of its perch on her lower lid and trailed down her cheek. The strong breeze coursing through the open window dried it before Emmeline had a chance to sweep it away. Oh, how she missed her home! It hadn't been her idea to leave Yorkshire County in England. It was Father's. Mother hadn't wanted her to go, either, but Father had insisted it was best. And when Father insisted, everyone had to agree or be made to feel miserable. Well, Emmeline reasoned as she blinked rapidly against more tears gathering in her eyes, she could not possibly be more miserable in England, facing Father's disapproval, than she was right now, sitting in this uncomfortable berth, facing a bleak future in a bleak land with a man she hadn't seen since she was a child of 17. What had Father been thinking to send her here? In a pocket, hidden in the seam of her wide skirt, she carried the letter that had started it all. Father had said, "Take it with you, Emmeline, and show it to your Geoffrey in the event he should not recognize you." The way he'd said "your Geoffrey" had sent a knife of terror through her breast. Father must have seen the fear in her eyes, because he added, in a surprisingly kind tone, "I do not believe there will be a question, Emmeline. It is merely a safeguard." And she had nodded in unwilling acquiescence, not daring to tell Father what she truly feared. How could she think of this stranger as her Geoffrey? She barely remembered the man. If, perchance, he should fail to recognize her, would she be allowed to return to her beloved England? Every night since Father had made his announcement that great-uncle Hedrick would accompany Emmeline to America to become, at long last, the bride of Geoffrey Garrett, she had prayed fervently, prayed for release from the arrangement made when she was too young to fully appreciate the consequences, prayed for understanding from Father. But Father had never wavered in his resolve to send her away. "A Bradford honours his word," he'd insisted, ignoring Emmeline's tearful pleas. It hadn't seemed to matter that Geoffrey had not honoured his word. Hadn't he promised on the day he set sail that he would return in a year's time to exchange wedding vows in the little chapel their families had attended? But 5 years slipped by, and then instead of returning, he had merely summoned her with the directive that they would wed in Kansas. They would live in Kansas, away from family and friends. During each leg of the journey, she had begged God to allow her to turn around and go home again. Still, the ship and the trains had moved her relentlessly toward Kansas, and her waiting groom. Groom, what a frightening word that was. Better she should say her waiting stranger, for that is what Geoffrey Garrett was, a complete and utter stranger. "Prayers are no more effective than tears," she moaned softly, clutching the letter in her pocket with trembling fingers. "Neither prayers nor tears do any good." She quickly brought up her fingers to swish away the moisture on her cheeks. Taking her hands from her face, she looked at her gloves and wanted to cry again. Dust had changed the once pristine whiteness to a dingy grey. With dismay, she realized that she must be covered from head to toe in the awful dust emitted from the coal-burning engine. She consoled herself with the thought that at least on her black dress it would be less noticeable than on her gloves. What a sight I must be! Perhaps Father was wise to send the letter with me. Geoffrey might indeed have difficulty recognizing me under this covering of soot. The conductor weaved his way down the aisle again, calling in a deep tone, "Next stop is Moorland, folks." Moorland, where Geoffrey would be waiting. Pressing her hand to the square of paper in her hip pocket, she closed her eyes and prayed once again for deliverance. Geoffrey Garrett stood in the stiff Kansas breeze, his focus on the parallel lines of track disappearing over the horizon. His heart thrummed rapidly. Each passing minute brought her closer. Emmeline, the daughter of his father's best friend, the sweet...